Hey guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. Today, we're talking so much cringe. Archetypes edition. You guys, we have discussed this awful podcast before, but I just thought, you know what? I want to talk a little bit more about it because it is truly terrible. We actually deep dove into an episode on Patreon where we listened and discussed amongst ourselves, and it's worse than I could possibly even explain. But I thought we would get into some of the behind the scenes stuff and, more importantly, the reviews that were left on this thing because they are hilarious. So Archetypes is their Spotify exclusive podcast. And I say he is on, I believe, at least one episode, but it's mostly hers. There are 23 episodes at the time of this recording. There are speculations that it's done, but then even when you go into IMDb, it's not showing it is quite over yet. There's still an open on the end date, so we'll see. It's to be determined, I suppose. As you can tell when you click, I just went to IMDb. I was very curious. I figured the sugars honestly had infiltrated the reviews, so I figured it wouldn't be so bad. But you guys, take a look at this. Almost 4,000 reviews, 3.2 out of 10. Now, I want you to look at this. This is the cover art that they use for the podcast. A Spotify original, Archetypes with Meghan. Since when does she not use her title? Come on, what are we doing here? But look at this picture. I'm so down to earth. Look at me. It's time to get serious with a microphone. Look at me. I have important thoughts. Listen to me. Oh, that's what I should call this. Listen to me. So some of her guests have included Mariah Carey, Jenny Slate, Mindy Kaling, different people like that. We actually listened to the Serena Williams episode. Oh my goodness. I've talked about it at length, but I will remind you here. We listened for a good 20 minutes, and I swear to God, we didn't even get to hear Serena. I couldn't believe it. It was only Meghan talking, and it is the weirdest, most disjointed thing. I had heard allegedly that she had somebody else interview the guests, and then she would record the beginning part and then go in and plug herself in like she's having the conversation. I don't know that to be the fact, and where she and Serena are friends, maybe she actually talked to Serena, but I could tell you what. The beginning part was so unbelievable. Jay and I just kept saying, when does Serena talk? Like, the one I actually want to hear what she might have to say. She might have some interesting things. No, it's just Meghan going on and on about her favorite subject, herself. So a funny thing I discovered when I was putting together this video, I was Googling that archetypes, and I found out allegedly Meghan had tried to trademark the word archetypes. And they said, no, you can't. No, that's already a word. You can't just take that for yourself. So the other funny thing, it's been reported that Spotify spent about $18 million. This is from the Daily Mail. $18 million on a 3-year Harry and Meghan deal. But he's been on record saying that he got, quote, carried away on a spending binge here. So it wasn't just their podcast that they were talking about, but he has specifically called out spending too much on their podcast. I'm an important businesswoman. Listen to me. You guys, I can't even with this photo shoot. What's happening here? Okay, so let's take a look at what we're all here for. Let's take a look at some of the reviews. Now, these are just IMDb reviews. Spotify is a real pain in the ass to try to find reviews on. I believe there are reviews for it, but I just went to somewhere where a lot of reviews were held, IMDb, and just to take a look. And again, I showed you at the beginning, terrible score. Let's take a look at some of the reviews. So this is the very first one I came to. It's actually a featured review, and it's titled Pointless, and they gave it a 1 out of 10. The Archetypes podcasts are nothing but self-promotion and false trumpet blowing by the overinflated ego of a narcissist. Not even the topics covered were interesting. Time I will never get back. That's exactly how I felt after listening to it. I just couldn't believe it. It was so much nothing and so much herself. Anyway, I had high hopes for this. I didn't. But it showed me another side of the speaker. Thoroughly unenjoyable at times, uncomfortable, and cringeworthy. I would suggest whoever has not listened to these episodes to not waste their precious time. Nothing will be gained from listening. I now have to use another 130 characters for my review to be accepted. So this is what I'm doing now, but I have nothing else to say about the podcast. I love it. That's such an excellent review. That was my exact takeaway. It was such a waste of time and such a weird self-promotion. It's like, I don't want you to waste your precious time on this, but I do think you should. I don't want to even give her the listen. Listen for 5 minutes. Maybe find if somebody's posted online or something, just listen for 5 minutes and just hear how ass-kissy it is. It's wild. Those word salads that I've posted? It's that times 100. But throw in a bunch more me's and you've got the podcast. All right, another featured review, The Audacity of the Activist, or do you mean bullies? 1 out of 10. The artifice in this episode is beyond comprehension, starting with the host and the guest, both accused of bullying of staff and fans who are critical of them. Here's an exercise in presence, claiming to the activists. This episode draws to home the fact that much of Hollywood is about virtue signaling and word salads, activists, or agenda setting. For both participants, while it's encouraging to hear beliefs in certain causes, it's disgraceful to see that their actions don't match. Now, unfortunately, the way that IMDb listed this one, it didn't say which specific episode they were talking about. I would love to know which guest they're talking about, but I get what they mean. It's the preaching, it's the Ellen thing over again, right? Like, be kind, and then you find out behind the scenes they're a monster. Same thing. Okay, the next one says boring and shallow. That could be a description of Meghan. 1 out of 10. And it says, I tried to give it a chance because I was a fan of Meghan, but I started to like her less after each episode. After everything else she's put out, sadly, I'm no longer a fan. I hope Archetypes, and then parentheses wrote stereotypes, lol, doesn't get another season. The episodes themselves just seem very self-absorbed. The focus was always on Meghan the most, not the amazing women she was supposedly interviewing. Ding, ding, ding. Exactly. That's exactly my complaint. I wanted to hear what Serena had to say, but I couldn't even get there because I had to get through 20 minutes of this doofus talking. She would not shut up about herself. And it's not just kissing her own ass, which I will call out. It's the slow and measured way she speaks and kind of flirty, but nonsense. I would go nuts. I talk too fast as it is. I have people tell me to slow down, but I can't help it. I'm thinking fast. I'm talking fast. It's crazy. I don't know how people could. I would lose my mind trying to listen to this thing. I don't know how you could get anything done or just get into this podcast. It's the most self-absorbed thing I've ever seen or heard. All right, another one, a self-serving debacle, 1 out of 10. While I really would have liked to hear more from the guests, Markle has an annoying habit of interjecting herself into the conversation. It is less interview or even chatting with a friend over a defined topic and more of a dissertation on how Markle perceives herself. That's right. That's so well said. It is. It's a dissertation. She's right, or this person's right. It's forced, uninteresting, and exemplifies why people have said in other reviews that it's more about Markle, less about the guests. Mariah Carey at least got a few words in. I won't tune in again. I have no interest in a podcast with celebrities that don't get to speak, while Meghan spends so much time on her favorite topic, herself. This person nailed it. And I don't think all these people got together to say the same thing. This is truly what people are thinking. I didn't have to search out these reviews. They were just in order like this. And this is exactly what I was saying too. It's a dissertation on herself. And why advertise you're going to have celebrities on if you don't let them speak? All right. This one's called Let's Talk About Me. 1 out of 10. I'm afraid I found it too hard to listen to for more than a couple of minutes at a time. What a farce. I understand many of her guests were not even in the room with her, which of course gave her the opportunity to talk about her favorite subject, herself. See, I told you I heard the same thing. I can't even remember where I heard it, but I heard that somebody else did the interview and that I think at least one of the guests thanked the person that interviewed them rather than Markle. Anyway, the subject matter was, for the most part, not archetypal or even stereotypical. Wow, that's hard to say. Stereotypical. I'm not sure how they applied the majority of listeners or even Markle herself. It felt as if she was clutching at straws at her podcasts were, of course, peppered with veiled threats to the British royal family, which she squeezed in between talking about Meghan. Terrible. All right, this one is all about me again. 1 out of 10. Meghan is supposed to be interviewing famous women to discuss various stereotypes about women, which she mistakenly refers to as archetypes, and what holds them back. She spends most of the time talking about herself rather than interviewing some genuinely successful women in their own right. And I love this little dig right here because they write rather than through their husband's position, like Meghan. In one of the interviews, Meghan talks for 10 minutes before, deigning to let her guest speak. Meghan talks in circles, often not making a lot of sense. Her words are seemingly chosen for how intelligent they make her sound instead of making any point. Basically, word salad. That's exactly how I felt too. It's like, do you remember the episode of Friends? Go with me here. When Joey decided to use a thesaurus to help write a letter for Chandler and Monica for the adoption? And he used it for every word to sound smarter, and it just became nonsense. I mean, hilarious, but nonsense. At least his was funny. Hers is just nonsense. She makes what could be interesting topics terribly boring with the focus on her. She will struggle to get guests if there's a future series. She was basically interviewing herself and using their name to gain listeners. Now, that is an excellent point. I didn't even think about it. She's using their names to gain listeners. I think of it more as if she put somebody famous on her podcast, some sugar might accidentally believe that they're friends. So it's like, look at all these celebrity guests I can get, that sort of thing. Wow, that's such an interesting point, though. Just attach their name to it and talk over them. That's pretty good. All right, not recommended, 1 out of 10. The podcast sounded insincere and fake. The content deserves a word salad award. She'll buy one, don't worry. The topics were out of date or not relatable, and what her ambitions were seemed not to be addressed other than very happy with herself. I would not recommend this to anyone. Hopefully Spotify will use their resources on someone who actually has something to say or has achieved something. After the drama this person has put the royal family through the past 3 years, it's sad that she is not held accountable for her statements that have been broadcasted on a worldwide platform without being held accountable for her damaging narratives. Wow. Okay, so much to unpack here. They are absolutely right, but I don't expect anything else from them. They only do interviews with people who are kiss their asses, where they get the questions in advance and they can have these canned answers and, victim-y answers, and they don't get questions on the bullcrap that they peddle. So why would the podcast be any different? If anything, it's more about her because she's in charge of herself, I guess. Funny side note, I've talked about this before. I believe it was Megyn Kelly pointed out they hired a fact checker for this thing. And it's just funny to think she can't keep track of her own story. So she needed a fact checker to allegedly keep her story straight. I'm not sure. I find that very funny. Guys, this is about all the archetypes I can stand. Let me know in the comments if you listened to any of it, if you had heard some of this stuff, if any of it was new to you. If you end up reading the reviews, let me know that too, because it's pretty funny to read those, but what a mess. Yeah, again, thank you all so much for being here. We so appreciate it. Thank you for all the love and support. And check back because we got lots more videos coming out. And if there's something you want to see a video on, leave us comments about that too. As always, if you want to further support the show, check out the merch. We got Make It Make Sense. Recollections may vary. And if you also want to support the show, check out Patreon. Patreon.com/Real Housewives Recaps. That's where you can become an executive producer and get your shout out. Speaking of which, I'm going to shout out my executive producers now. So huge thank you to Linda. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you to Paige. Huge thank you to Teresa. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Shauna. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Aaron and Frank. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Ann M. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Ann H. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Glynis. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Adair Becker. Thank you to Erica. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Barb G. Thank you to Diana. Thank you, Allison B. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Lori. Thank you to Pauline. Thank you to KT. Thank you, Jolene. Thank you, Stromboli. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Loie. Thank you, Lucy H. Thank you to Georgia. Thank you, Susie. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Robbins Landing. Thank you to Helen. Thank you to Mara. Thank you, Ashley C. Thank you to Molly. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Sand Squid. Thank you to Rach. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Dee Dee. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Penny. Thank you, Domby. Thank you, Android P. Thank you to Sheena. Thank you, Aaron M. Thank you, Faye. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Spectrum Mom. Thank you, Vanessa B. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Mimi Heathcote. Thank you, Misty. Thank you, Candy. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you to Bree. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you to Elvis Rose here on YouTube. Thank you to Lori. Thank you, Tim B. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Elisa. I so appreciate you all. Thank you if you are on the Patreon. Thank you if you're an executive producer. And hey, if you're not, definitely check it out. We have a lot of fun over there. Guys, I hope you have the best day, and I will talk to you again soon. Can't wait to bring you another video like this. Take care. Bye-bye.